This is Pamela Kuhn, and the curtain is up on Center Stage, the show about the arts and the artists behind their work. My listeners know of my undying devotion to the film world of Star Wars, but we have never really spoken about that other cult arena of the television series that really started it all, and I'm talking about Star Trek. Live long and prosper, as uttered by Mr. Spock, may have become one of the most cherished taglines of this beloved TV series and later film adventures, but it was a phrase that ignited the spark of inspirational moments that we all came to love in Star Trek. The show gave us the passion to boldly go where no one had gone before, and my guest today answered that call and became a part of the Star Trek family and world. Actress, comedian, and author Laura Banks was a nice girl who answered a small ad in a trade paper. That ad led to a significant part in Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan. Considered by many to be the best of the Star Trek movie franchise, The Wrath of Khan broke out of the doldrum mood that was set in the first Star Trek film, directed by Robert Wise, and brought us back into the character-driven and passionate realm of the Star Trek that we have all grown to love. I have Laura with me today, and the delight of this interview is that she has just written her new book, Close Encounters with Captain Kirk, The Making of the Wrath of Khan, and the rest of it. And I think it is safe to say that we will be hearing many highlights about Star Trek while we soak up her personal journey as an artist. The road she has traveled has been defined by 9 lives, and she is still reinventing herself. Laura Banks, welcome to Center Stage. It is such a joy to have you.
Oh, Pamela, what a delicious intro. It's just magnificent. I already love you. And
well, I try.
Look at what I'm looking at, these beautiful trees and things lit up and candles. It's like I'm watching a Lord of the Rings episode or something. It's very magical.
It's kind of like that in our house. I've got to tell you, we are big Trekkies, we're big Star Wars fans. We love Harry Potter. We love Lord of the Rings. We bow to Lord of the Rings. So in a way, Laura, our house is very much set up. And to all my listeners out there, we are on a Zoom broadcast right now. So we're having this great visual feast. So
yes.
The lighted trees in my house, I keep those on all year long because I want that sense of magic here, you know?
Yes.
I mean,
and it's present.
We as artists, as creators, we've got to have that. We've got to ignite
that,
right?
Yes, yes.
So tell me, how did a girl like you get into a film like Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan?
Well, first I had to get out of Kansas. So that took some doing. And I do go into that in my book. I'll just show the cover of it real quick. Close Encounters. I know it's kind of a glare there with Captain Kirk, The Making of the Wrath of Khan.
It's beautiful.
And thanks. It was a situation where my mother was New York City born and raised, and I go into this in the book. And she always wanted to be an actress, and she wasn't. She was an artist and repressed and not very happy lady. And the acting world really lit me up because of the inundation of movies I watched with her. I mean, constantly watching these black and white movies. And then I was named after Laura, the film, and the Oscar-winning song. So that started it all.
That film. Oh, we're talking about like Joseph Cotton, right? Oh, I love
Laura is a face in the misty light, footsteps that you hear down the hall. Well, I was named after the song. Mm-hmm. And so I had this thing where my mother was not happy in Kansas and always talking about New York, always wanted to be an actress. So it was in my blood. And then there was a conversation that there were relationship to the Barrymores in my family. So there is some kind of a relation that I've been looking to explore more, but my grandmother just talked about it all the time. And she was Adele Drew. So true or false, whatever, it was in my psyche. So as soon as I could, right after finishing college or close there to it, ended up graduating in California. I had $500 and I just moved to California, moved to San Diego, met Whoopi Goldberg. And oddly, like I moved to San Diego, one of the first things I do is I meet Whoopi Goldberg.
How amazing.
Which is one of the stories of my book, which is I'm a Forrest Gump, a female Forrest Gump, all of these amazing encounters. So I end up, chilling down there in San Diego for a while and getting my credits transferred from KU to a state college there and getting a degree in drawing and painting and what have you. But then eventually, after working with Whoopi Goldberg for a while with an improv troupe, made it up to Los Angeles, which is where it started to get interesting. Well, the
Wow.
Whoopi part was interesting too, but
So, how did
that's
you
when
meet Whoopi Goldberg? I mean, were you just standing waiting for a bus like Forrest Gump?
I mean, Pam, I'm waitressing tables in Mission, Kansas, in the middle of nowhere, and Anthony Newley is my customer, and I'm barely 15 because he's performing at the Starlight Theater. I
Oh
mean,
my God.
my parents take me to Vegas, and Robert Goulet ends up kissing me on the forehead, and now I mean, like this is I'm not even, but I'm not around celebrities. I'm living in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, so I met Whoopi. I think I'd seen some listing or a classified ad that they were looking for comedians or to be a part of this theater troupe. I've been thinking about this. I don't really know how I ended up at the Marquis Public Theater, except that I was an actress. And there probably was an audition for something. And then I found the troupe and we
Wow.
were working together on that. And we've stayed friends and she's amazing. So, and
That's
she's one of the few
wonderful.
that's an EGOT, right? She's won
Yeah.
every award. Uh, but I always knew that was my back door to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I got to LA and had all kinds of things happen to me there. So my book, The Close Encounters with Captain Kirk, goes into all of the stories of getting out of Kansas and my mother and how she worked at the Paramount Theater in New York City as an usherette,
Okay.
and
Okay.
how I ended up working at Paramount Pictures in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan,
I love
which
it.
is sort of, I love that parallel, but this is me from the film with Ricardo.
Look at you
So
with the
you
amazing and the legendary Ricardo Montalban. I mean,
yes, amazing
just
man, amazing man.
what a picture to behold. I mean, first of all, before we go any further, I
Yes.
adore Ricardo Montalban, and he was always an underrated
Mm,
actor of the golden age
so
of
amazing.
Hollywood.
Yeah,
He was married to Loretta Young's half sister. You know, he's
yeah,
done so much for Latinos, in the movie
yes,
world. And
yes.
what was he like to work with?
A treasure. Just, I just had the opportunity to be on stage at a big convention in Las Vegas with his son-in-law, Gil Smith. And they had the Montalban Theater in Los Angeles, which is a not-for-profit organization that does continue to support Latinos. I worked with him for a month. So I get the part, and we maybe talk a little bit about how I got the part, but I ended up there with Ricardo, and he was always in character. So he was very intense as
Mm.
Khan. There wasn't a lot of chatting in between, but the most gracious man, that old school, gentlemanly, there's a puddle, he's going to put his coat down. I would get tired while shooting, and it was my first time on set. I didn't know from a movie set. So I see a chair, I see a director's chair, and I'll collapse in it from time to time. And then I was getting looks. And then, well, in the back it said Ricardo Montalban. I hadn't bothered to realize this was his chair. And never once did he say, excuse me. But, there was
Mhm.
just absolutely nothing but this warm hearted affection, as just a person, not toward me, but just there was just this graciousness,
Yeah,
but there was a reserve and there was a professionalism. He was in pain the entire time. He
really,
fell off
from
a
his
horse in the
his
50s,
accent.
right?
Yeah, mhm.
And he had a lot of stunt work to do and a lot of focus, and they'd yell action, and he was here, and they'd cut, and he'd be like,
Oh
coming,
my gosh,
dealing with the
really?
pain. Oh, yeah. And just to watch him work, he had two gloves on as Khan at the beginning,
Yes.
and then we're waiting between shots, and again he's staying in character. And as an actor, I'm studying this man. Now that I've been sat in the navigator chair, I had this opportunity to watch this amazing man who was making Fantasy Island at the same time, and they worked around his schedule. He slowly starts to take off one of the gloves, and he puts it in his lap like it's a pet or something. Everything's all thought out, and now he's got one glove on and one glove off. And I remember thinking, there's so much meaning in this little action. And I've been thinking about it a lot. And then Nick Meyer, the director, comes over, and he notices what he's done with the glove. And they had this intuitive relationship where there wasn't a lot of language. There was a lot of eye contact. And really, Nick Meyer, he was dealing with an actor who had been working for many, many, many years and really had less experience than Nick. And at one point, Nick gave him some direction, and Ricardo went, "Oh." so you're going to direct me, are you?
Oh, I love it.
It wasn't said in any horrible way. It was just said like, okay, you know,
It was an
but
awakening. Oh
just a
my God.
powerfully intense man. And it was his real chest. He worked out every morning from for a couple hours. He'd get up at 3 a.m. and just pump iron to
Ah,
have this enormous chest.
I always wondered about that. I just presumed it was some sort of, prosthesis.
Prosthetic.
And then
No.
I read an interview that he said he just did lots of exercise and he always stayed fit, even though he was in a certain amount of pain. My gosh, this is quite remarkable. And because the Moby Dick is brought into it, so we get this Shakespearean kind of feel, with all his monologues. I mean, really, the film is incredible in that way. And I have to say, Laura, it's one of my favorites because I felt that, coming off the original Star Trek, the motion picture, which was so
Yeah.
slow and we
Yeah.
lost our love for our characters. We want the gang
Yes.
back, and we got
Yeah.
it in The Wrath of Khan. And it was just
Yes.
highlighted with Khan
Yeah.
Noonien Singh, played by Ricardo Montalban. Well, look, okay. Well, enough of that. So tell me about how you got this part.
Okay. Well, and I will add to that Nick Meyer did a rewrite in 2 weeks and turned it around. And in Star Trek One, Gene Roddenberry was just focused on the Enterprise and pictures of the Enterprise and more. And it was really Nick who had to fight against Gene actually to make it more of a story of the people and the relationships and Spock. And so I was probably waiting tables because I had to, girls got to eat. Right. And I used to read Dramalog, which was the magazine out there of choice for classified ads for what parts are available. And in the back was an ad with a box around it. Call that a display ad for a person. And that person was me in this ad. It was my height, my weight, my measurements, my hair. And I instantly call central casting and I go, hey, this is me. Other than you didn't put my blood pressure and my astrological sign in here, this is me. And so they said, all right, get down here. And I get down there and they looked at me and then they went, all right, go over to Paramount. So I went over to Paramount and I got in front of Nick and I'm walking into Paramount Pictures. I'm like, oh my God, 22 years old or something. And my book is about how I've always looked to like Purple Rose of Cairo, like how do those worlds of movie making and characters and actors and stories and high romance as the theme intersect and collide with real life.
Yeah.
So I'm walking into Paramount Pictures and just all of that moments that my mother had around that whole world and her world and my world colliding in my brain. And I walk in and I can identify what the film's about right away. There's bridges and tunnels and I don't know, and I'm not a Star Trek fan at the time. So anyway, Nick sees me, we talk for a while and he says, yes, thumbs up, but we'll get back to you. It wasn't for sure. So I went back to work and at work the phone rang and they said, Laura, you got to call on line 2, make it quick. And it was central casting. They said, you've got the role, you got to quit whatever job you're doing because you're going to work for a month and you have to be there tomorrow to get into your wardrobe. Or actually I had to go that day to get into wardrobe.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you're just like lit from within. I mean, driving home thinking, this is it. This is my star coming towards me.
I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know it was Star Trek. I didn't know the stature of the film. At that point, I'd worked on a film with Mike Douglas and John Voight called Table for Five as background. Yeah. And whenever the few films I made as background, I'd always get moved forward. So that wasn't a break. And what was this? I didn't really know. I didn't know. Oh, no, all I knew was Paramount Pictures, and I knew that was really cool.
So what was the first day of filming like for you? I mean, I suppose you knew when you went in for costume.
No, I don't know that I still knew anything. I mean, the whole show was so under wraps. There were so many levels of secrecy because they didn't want the story to get out to Trek World, which is, 40 million fans. So they were trying to play cool even with who was being hired. So eventually, I get fitted and they measure everything but my pinky and I get in a wardrobe and I get on set and we first see us on SETI Alpha 5 where they discover us of having been abandoned by Kirk, many years ago, and I'm in this giant rug costume, which is god awful. It was the worst time to shoot because it was a heavy, maybe 20, 30 pound wardrobe. And we're all these, maybe a dozen extras at this point in these, and we're super genetically engineered. So the women are 5'10" and over, I'm 5'11", and the men were 6'2" and over. And so we're these big people in these big outfits, rugs, I call them, which thrown over. And then they took us a hangar and they just threw tons and tons of dirt and sand and then giant wind fans. And then finally they position us. And I don't know what I'm doing yet. I know I'm in this big costume and they're setting us up on a hill. And then I hear the first time, roll speed, camera, action. And now there, I remember I got the goosies. I was like, that's what they say. Oh my God, that's what they say. So this was just filmed a lot, different angles, different touches. And then we moved from there to the little, I call it Khan's little RV, where you find us living inside that little RV.
Right.
Oh, by the way, it is the 40th anniversary of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. So that's why it's been in all the theaters, and it's a big deal year. That's why I wrote my book about it.
And God knows we need a little, kind of positive attitude out there. We need this film right now. We need to be reminded how great it is. Okay, but go on, because this is great. This is great.
So then I'm in the little RV, and then I see Ricardo Monacon for the first time. He comes in. And all of us are just, I think, I write in my book a lot about how movie stars, their energy takes up the room and then expands to the block and then goes around to the town. And it is this centrifugal. When Jack Nicholson, who pursued me to go out with him, and Warren Beatty, they're in my book. Nicholson, Beatty, Montalban, there's certain people, when they're in a room, it's like there's something shifted. There's something rarefied going on. And he was, we're doing a lot of stunts, and, he lifts up Chekhov and he puts the bugs in the ears, That was a 6-foot replica they built later to actually get that just right. But of course, these bugs went in that we now had control over them. So that was that scene. And, they kept eliminating extras every day. Okay. If you don't hear your name, please feel free to stay. We want you for another day. If you don't hear your name, and every day would be one, and then people would be going home, and I'm not leaving, and I'm not leaving, and I'm not leaving. And I'm like, yeah. And so now there's like another handful of us in this little RV. And the other background people are like, action. And they were still like doing a laundry, not there. I'm an actress. And that was the first thing Nick Meyer asked me. He goes, are you an actress? I said, yes, I am. And I knew when that camera was rolling that I needed to play every moment. And sure enough, you see me throughout because of the fact that I was involved and I was present and I was emoting. And the next thing I knew, I'm navigating the spaceship. When we get to the bridge, I get put in that chair. And now I know, now this feels singular. And now it's just down to me and another woman and a handful of guys. And now I know I've been moved forward to a very powerful position where Chekhov would normally sit on the bridge.
Yeah.
And very, very nervous, very excited, very uncertain of how to do anything. There was this huge Panavision camera in front of me, and I listened, and I just and I'd done a lot of acting in high school and college, so I knew to listen and to take direction and to just be professional and show up on time, and and then that was the beginning of the work on the Reliant.
Your mom must have been thrilled. Laura Bates. Your mom must have finally said, yes, she made it. I mean, this is incredible. So how long did that whole filming process take for you?
I was on set for about a month, which was pretty exciting. The fight sequence between the Reliant and the Enterprise is considered by many to be one of the best fight sequences. It was early industrial light and magic. It was the first time computer graphics had been used in a film to the level they were used.
That's
a lot of close-ups of me with Ricardo. And I'm quarter Spanish, so I always wondered if maybe they didn't know that, but there was a Spanish thing going on a little bit. But it was a very powerful thing to sit at the bridge of what would be a spaceship and feel as an actor, what that might feel like. And so we were in battle. So, you can't overact in a movie. You got to keep it all internal. And as I described Ricardo on stage a couple of weeks ago at Bally's, his brilliance came from how in the pocket he was. His emotions came from, and I'm sure as a singer and with your filmmaker co-host, Matt, you understand, it says it just starts in the belly and it just works its way up, and it never, ever quite gets out, but it's right there. Yeah. And then the camera pulls it in a little more, and then it all goes out a little bit, but it's not like out here, it's out here.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I was I'm a mimic. And so I think I was sort of smoldering along with him through the whole thing. And then I had a stunt double. I've died 3 times in 3 different movies, and this was one of my deaths. Yes, I've had 6 celluloid deaths,
I love that.
and
I love
I
that.
know 3 celluloid deaths and 6 cat celluloid deaths to come. But and they took me off for that. They closed the set and they brought in real stunt people to finish it. But then you see me again. They brought me back in because there's a point where the camera comes up and you see me dead. And I had one line: course plot to intercept Enterprise. Ready, sir. That was my line.
Mm-hmm.
And because they were so close to budget and so much pressure, I was there the moment they chose to not let me say my line, because they couldn't. And if they had let me, it would have changed my life forever. But meanwhile, this picture of me went around the world. It was in Time magazine. It was the first picture you saw of Star Trek, the Wrath of
So
Khan.
exciting, Laura Banks. I
And then
love.
that led to starring in 3 more movies and hosting a show on the Sci-Fi Channel and interviewing Carl Sagan and TJ Hooker and some episodic, and meeting William Shatner.
Everything that is connected. I love this. So, okay, we're going to get to the other movies in a minute, but let's talk about William Shatner, because I know you've had a special relationship with him. And, Center Stage with Pamela Kuhn is not a tell-all show, but I'm just dying to know what happened between you and the wonderful Captain Kirk.
Yes, and nor is my book really a tell-all. It's a highly comedic, tongue-in-cheek. I will leave it to say that we did date for about 4 months. And he's wildly funny, incredibly warm, generous, brilliant, charisma, an instant connection. We're born one day apart. He's still my friend. He got me my table in the Las Vegas convention. He was on my podcast. I interviewed him maybe just less than a year ago. But he's a very passionate, funny, personable man, and he is Captain Kirk. He is that man. He is that man. And I wrote in the book, I'm like, well, where in Close Encounters with Captain Kirk, where does the man intersect the character?
Yeah.
And again, with my fascination for when does reality end in the fantasy world that I engaged in so heavily with my mother from 5 years old on, where do they intersect? And I did sometimes when I was with Bill, I would and I'd be in my head, I'd be going, oh, I'm like one of the girls that came out from behind a rock and thigh-high polyester boots and a short skirt. He kissed 19 girls in Star Trek series in the 60s. 19, and some of them were green.
I love these details. I didn't expect this at all in this interview. This is fantastic.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But 4 months
spiritual.
together, couldn't you become the next, Mrs. Captain Kirk?
I actually ended it with him. I just didn't see it really going anywhere, and I just assumed there were others. And I absolutely, and in my whole point of view, I've developed, having written this memoir, Pam, I'm really present to one thing, that women, when you own your sensuality, when you own your adventures, when you own your life experiences, and there's no shame, and it's what happened, that's really important. And that's what's happened to me in the process of writing this book. For years I've been struggling whether to write this or not. And the end zone is, this book is written first of all, for people to follow their dreams. If you got a dream and you're not going for it, stop, go, just go. It'll be messy. It won't work. I didn't make it. I'm not Julia Roberts. I don't have her teeth, but I had the ride of my life, in these movies in Los Angeles. And so, yeah, you just got to go for it. And as far as a female, and I talk about various lovers, it's like, why is that sort of so shameful still in our country, where in France and other places it's not? Right. And Gwyneth Paltrow is a little bit on that bandwagon now, looking at, how as women can we own our sexuality a little more, own our sensuality. So in my book, I do give some details around that, not in any kind of sort of way, but in a way like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's all fun, like I asked David Letterman out on a date once and he refused, and some other fun encounters with, I rejected Nick Nicholson as a boyfriend.
How could you, was he pursuing you?
Yes.
Jack Nicholson?
Yeah.
Yeah, in that way he has, which, as you say, it just takes up
Oh.
the entire room. I would be afraid of that. He might suck all the air out of the room for you.
Well, yeah, it was Jack Nicholson and Warren Beatty, and I just thought I would just maybe just spontaneously combust if I would allow myself to be around them at all. just survival became into my, it was just woo, But in retrospect, I wish I had gone for it.
Hey, but in a way, you were ahead of your time, really feeling
Yes.
that you wanted to own your own power as a woman. And let's
Yes.
face it, you and I have kind of spanned two interesting arenas in life. I mean, when we were younger, and and I were both in Los Angeles at the same time. I wish we'd met, at the supermarket. I'm telling you right now.
Oh
You
yeah.
were living my dream in a way when I was studying to be an opera singer, but I had this intense love of Hollywood, just like you did. But it was a different time then. It was before the Me Too movement, and now things have changed. And
Yeah.
so now you were inspiring others to really go out and own your own power and be honest and reveal, and there's nothing wrong with
Hmm.
it. But yeah, it's an
No.
interesting point. Listen, I want to
Yeah.
ask, as a comedian, and I know you've done a lot
Yes.
of stand up, and of course, your relationship with Whoopi Goldberg and others. I mean, Robin
Yeah.
Williams comes to mind. There's a real close connection, I feel, between comedy and the depth of your soul in writing. And especially for the
Mhm.
books you've written. I think this is your third book or your fourth?
My fifth book,
Your
actually.
fifth book. So
Yeah, this will be my fourth to be released next month, mid-October 2022. But then there's a fifth book already written that's coming out.
wow. So you've written with a lot of humor and a lot of self-deprecating humor. And what's
Yes.
great is it makes the reality really palatable for all the rest of us. So is there a connection between comedy and the depth of your soul, really?
Well, I have never heard it phrased that way, Pam. That's very interesting. And you talk about comedy, and this is my favorite subject of all time.
Hmm.
Comedy cuts through anything with a silk knife. You can share a message, you can make extremely exquisitely important points that the world needs to hear from a societal perspective that don't necessarily mess up feathers as harshly as they might otherwise. So it cuts to the soul. I
Yeah.
think it takes a high level of intelligence to appreciate humor and to go out of your way to appreciate it.
Hmm.
People go, "Oh, that wasn't funny," or this and that. Like comedians are known for like always going, "All right, that was good," and not laughing. They just go, "All right, that was funny." I laugh at
Yeah.
everything. I was named Chucky as a kid growing up because I was laughing at everything, and I was 2, 3 years old. So I find comedy just about everywhere. And what's more soulful than something being ever present, getting that this is ridiculous. What
Hmm.
That's thunder. I don't know if you can hear it. This is ridiculous, our lives and what we do.
Yeah.
Uh, and I love to make people laugh. I think it's healing.
Hmm.
And I get a chuckle when I play with words and I find a tease and I find the humor, not in a bump way, but in a maybe a little shocking way. Certainly always pushing the envelope as a comic. And certainly George Carlin, one of my favorite comics, he made very important points in his stand up.
Yeah.
He was a great orator,
Always, always.
as was Mark Twain, who was a comic, really, I
Oh
think.
my God, the best. The best. Oh my God,
Yeah.
yes. Looking into the inner element in life. Yeah. Wow, very interesting. Wow. Well, Laura, you've really touched on so many avenues in your life. I mean, can you tell
But
us
the
quickly?
improvisation is my favorite. I love improvisation. There's nothing like it. I've done it my whole life. You're up there on a stage to get a who, what, where from the audience, and you've got to create something from nothing. What's more magical than that?
Yeah.
I draw, I paint, I act, I write, I sing, I do all these things. But improv, there is nothing harder to pull off than
Yeah.
that. And with Whoopi, she was so brilliant that all you could do was stand back, help her with her magic box of props,
Mm-hmm.
and learn and absorb
Mm-hmm.
and watch. And then I went on to do a lot of improv. And my most cherished times are with those improvisational moments in a comedy club. And I passed at some of the major clubs in New York and LA, but I never loved doing an act. I always found myself relating to the front row or talking with someone who was on
Oh,
a
that's
prom date
interesting.
or finding
Yeah.
the moments. And that's one of the reasons I didn't really go big as a stand-up, because I was too much enjoying the interaction of my audience and those
Was there
precious
ever
moments.
I know improv is so dangerous in a way, and
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Whose Line Is It Anyway, where, it's
Oh,
really thrown at them all the time. I was in London actually when that first started. It was
oh,
extraordinary. Are there ever nights when you feel you're off, that it doesn't percolate?
oh God, yeah. I mean, I talk about in my book, my very first time I went on stage as a stand-up, I bombed and I didn't come back for 10 years. I went on way too early and I just walked into the comedy store in La Jolla, California, and went, okay, I'm ready to go up. And oh, they should have never put me up. So,
Oh my
uh,
gosh.
and other than that, I once introduced Francis Ford Coppola at a Star Trek convention, an audience of about 5,000 people.
Okay.
And I had to go out and say hello. Completely started bombing. I flop sweat, couldn't remember my lines, 5,000 people. Ha! And now you're dying. You just rather just someone to shoot you because okay, fainting. There we go. If I faint, I can get off stage. Somehow I managed to remember the thing, which is relate to somebody. So I looked down at that front row and I'm like, how you doing today? Good. Where are you from? Blah, 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 blah. As soon as I did that, boom, I got back in just enough to deliver a
Okay.
few minutes of comedy and introduce Corporal Coppola. Ah, so
Did
yeah, you have nights. You have a heckler. You have a heckler. Really? You helping me? You think you have hecklers think they're helping you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, no,
No,
no, no.
they
You're throwing me
derail.
from my act. But
So did Coppola forgive you for that, or did anybody
oh,
really sniff out you were,
nobody
derailed?
noticed. Francis and I really didn't have much of an interaction that day. Although Francis Ford Coppola and I were both discovered by Roger Corman,
I
the
know.
filmmaker.
So let's.
Coppola discovered Shatner and Coppola and Ron Howard and Barbara Hershey and Nicholson, and Corman put me in Wheels of Fire and Demon of Paradise, which I must say just about killed me shooting in the Philippines. And I go into that in my book, how I led real armies into battle who decided to shoot off their real guns with ammunition. Pam, I make movies with the word action in them. I know I don't make any movies, action adventure, action comedy, action horror.
Oh my gosh. So I've read the chapter of that book where you're literally being shot at with real bullets, and you said you
Yes,
suffered from post-traumatic stress for a while and you couldn't come out of your hotel room. Does
right.
Roger Corman just set things up like this just because, it's there, or does he like to instill literally a sense of reality in the scene? I mean, too much reality.
It's just a buck, Pam. He's just making a movie and he was churning and burning out as many projects as he could in a year. And he was the master of it. And Clint Eastwood studied Corman to create a movie on budget and in time. He was not aware, I don't believe, of what danger we were in on a regular basis over there shooting these movies, jumping out of an armored personnel carrier and explosions. Sometimes they would intentionally set off an explosion just to get my reaction for
Oh
the
my
for the for
gosh.
the camera. But
You
that
have
didn't
to be kidding
happen
me.
too often. I can say that happened 2 or 3 times in the entire shooting of Wheels of Fire, which is just this god awful movie, by the way. Um,
But you look
but
great, Laura.
mostly
You
I
look
would get a
really
heads up.
great. You're like the road warrior in that. I'm telling you.
Yeah. And then Demon of Paradise, where I was eaten by a monster, and I played a hotel resort owner there. That was a
I
lot of
love
fun.
it.
But when I look back at the body of my work, it's really about reinvention. And as a mature woman, the roles start coming in, and then I'm like, well, I'm going to write, and that's what we always have to be doing is reinventing yourselves. The way you're producing this program, and you're staying present and aware to people, and learning and growing all the times and performing. If you stop, look at Shatner. I believe him to be the model for all of us to follow. I just saw him speak a couple of weeks ago. Look at the guy's innocent. He's 90 and he's being shot up into outer space. He's writing a
Right.
dozen books. He does poetry. He does music. He does teleplays. Unstoppable. And I asked him about that. I go, how, why, what? And he goes, you just have to see everything as the end of a chapter, and then the next chapter, and then the next chapter.
Hmm.
Because
And then
I
there's another
talked to him
page.
about how his wife died in the pool and how he was really a mockery a bit of the cinema world with his
Right.
acting. And so
Right.
he said, oh, really? So he gets into Third Rock from the Sun and starts playing a character on himself.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's right. That's
he's
right.
no one's going to take him down. If anyone's going to make fun of him, he's going to be the first. And then that transgressed into Boston Legal, where he was just this
Correct. He was on
integration of this
fire. I mean,
tremendous talent.
it's just incredible the life he's had. Our
Yeah,
dear Captain Kirk. But yet it's
yeah,
so interesting to me, Laura, I want to segue into the shows, the conferences you attend, and you sign
yes.
autographs and you talk about your life in Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan. So many of us live for these cults. It's like Roger Corman, the great master of the B movie. We love him. He's also a great actor. I mean, I think of him in Godfather Part 2. He's always coming up, and he's had such a presence in our lifetime in movie making. But yet, I mean, there's just so much going on here that ties everything together, And for we Trekkies, we live for these conferences. We live for the latest pictures. We live for the latest news about Captain Kirk. We don't care about the mockery along the way. This is beloved, you know. And you've been a
And
part of
why
this.
is that? I ask you, why? I mean, I have an answer, but I want yours.
I think with the tie that binds is kind of like the same tie in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I think Steven Spielberg hit on it there, where some of us have been called. It's like you say, my house looks like Lord of the Rings, and I talk about magic. And I think that when we met the Star Trek characters initially back in the 60s, what we loved was the familial relationship. And there was this fantastic energy between everyone. It's been replicated in other of the spin-offs, most notably, I think, in Star Trek The Next Generation, where we fell in love with the characters again. And they become part of our family. They come into us, and we want to be a part of that. And I think that's why we are driven to attend conferences, or that's why people in Star Wars have to go see Harrison Ford. I mean, they know he's a great actor, but he's still Han Solo, and that represents an integral part of our psyche, that we want to be able to have the hero's journey. And that's really what Star Trek and Star Wars are all about. We're all on a journey, and some of us more than others, like you.
That's beautiful. And the diversity, Pam, the acceptance of the, Sulu and Nichelle Nichols at the console of a ship and
Oh,
the interracial kiss that happened. I mean, and then when you look at, they were the first people with the flip phone, with the flat screen. I mean, there's so many inventions I go into in my book that they were integral to being the first visionary. I think there's an
correct.
energetic, and Bill and I've spoken about it on my show and in his show, The Unexplained on the History Channel. I believe that there is an energy happening around the work of the synchronicity of all the actors coming together and of Gene creating it and of the fans fighting it for it to not go away. There's something that's going out into the universe that's doing something bigger than we know. That's what I
Yeah,
believe. I believe
yeah.
art is at the center of our existence, the way Mr. Rockefeller once said it on a wall at Lincoln Center, not on the outskirts. It's in the
That's
center.
that's right. Boy, he
Very
nailed
hard.
it there. And again, for some of us, we've been called. And
Yeah.
we're there. It's for those who don't answer it. I'm always wondering, what did they miss? What was the message they missed? And maybe it is for
Yeah.
another life. I don't know. But I'm just so glad that you and I are a part of this,
Well, we're a
because
tribe. There's something tribal to it,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I hosted a Sea Trek cruise. I will be hosting a cruise this year, and I'll be appearing in
Oh,
Tampa this weekend. And it looks like I'm going to do a lot more conventions, so that's fun. I stopped doing them, but I was on a Sea Trek cruise back in the day, and I had a chance to introduce Gene Roddenberry, and everybody was there, and I was the MC, and I brought out Nichelle and Jimmy and George and everybody just like, and Gene Roddenberry with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the creator, the master, the person that made this all possible. Gene, stand up and take a bow. Well, Gene was in a wheelchair
yeah. Oh boy.
and he got up. He got up and the crowd went wild.
I bet. I bet.
And someone had said, don't put that in your book. That's awful. I'm like, it's what
No,
happened.
it's what
And
happens.
someone said, do put that in your book because that's who Gene Roddenberry is. He would have gotten up.
Oh my God, that is so exciting. So tell me the whole conference life. Do you really enjoy it? Do you just get
Love
so
it.
much love off the fans? It's like self perpetuating.
It's great to be back. I don't know why I went away. I guess I thought the role was small, and I didn't know where I fit into it, and I had some maybe resentment around the franchise that I didn't get that one line, and everything's confusing, and my relationship with Bill and all of it. It's like, well, I'm moving on, and now I'm a writer, and now I'm in New York, and now I'm doing my comedy and my books, and because my second book sold 250,000 copies, and it was a USA Today bestseller, Breaking the Rules. That was comedy driven, so my life became much more about live performances and comedy, and then Embracing Your Big Fat Ass at Simon and Schuster. Both books got up to be a series at William Morris, and so I was really. And then everything fell apart in 17. I lost my business partner of 35 years and best friend, and everything went crazy. And I moved down here to Florida to care for my father. So there's been a hiatus.
Yeah.
But long-winded answer to your question. Now I'm back at the conferences, and what brought me back was the 40th anniversary of 40th anniversary of ST2, and to feel so welcome. I just didn't know how people were going to respond to me, and they were really, really, really welcoming. And it was really, really good. Really, really good.
I can imagine there's been a lot of passion.
And I saw my old friend Robin Curtis from Star Trek 3. We're friends, and
Brilliant.
it was just. And Anthony Rapp was there, who's a friend of mine from high school, from acting classes in New York, and it's like, oh my gosh, how could I ever stop doing this? This is such a beautiful energy here, and everybody's so gracious and having fun and being self-expressed, which is the main point of my book. Have self-expression.
Yeah.
Find your self-expression.
Yeah, this is much more than just about Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan,
Yeah.
Laura. This is about much, much more. Well,
Yeah.
what does the future hold for Laura Banks now?
I'm getting on board with a very big PR firm. Expect to hear a lot about Close Encounters everywhere. I'm expecting there to be a movie of this, because picture this: it's the story of a girl from Kansas to California who ends up in action pictures leading armies into battle, and then she's an extra in these movies, and then she's an extra in this famous film, and dates the lead guy, and then ends up in stand-up comedy clubs. And I mean, it's just, I believe the story is perfect for cinema or for film or television series. So that's my next main focus. There will be a couple more books coming. One of them will be about my years in New York City that I don't go into in the book, about dating and being with this doctor, famous doctor to the stars, who took care of Lauren Bacall and Leonard Bernstein and Adolph Green and Carly Simon. So this was my little hangout crowd in New York. Diane Sawyer and Jack and Mike Nichols, my favorite of all time person on the planet.
Oh, yes.
I mean, these were like people I'd see over drinks, so that story is going to be told. And then I'm telling the story of the Villages, Florida, where I ended up caring for my father, because there's such a story to be told about this retirement community in Florida. I'm already out on a video everywhere about it. If you go to YouTube and you type in "excuse me what," and you look at the Cougar episode, it's all comedy, all me, all the time, full out, unstoppable. It's got 500,000 hits, almost about 460,000. And now I've got a series with them I'm going to be doing with TikTok and Snapchat called Hot Shots and This or That. And I'm doing like a woman on the street comedy thing. And Mark Cuban is one of the partners on that. So it's all coming through this company called Offbeat Media out of Atlanta, where Mark Cuban's a partner, and where I'll be doing on-camera work.
Okay, you're taking my breath away now. You are
Yeah.
motivated. You're really
Oh,
motivated.
I'm back. And I'm
You're
old,
back,
and
baby.
it's amazing. It's like anybody who's old and not back, get back. It's okay. You can be old, even though my hair's kind of funky today. You can be old and you can go for it.
I think that's fantastic. What a
If
way
you're
to
sad,
start
if you're depressed, if somebody died, like I go into my book that my brother committed suicide and how hard that was. There will be times in your life where there's
a dip. Yeah,
and just make sure
it
to get back
happens.
up there and have friends around you that can help you.
Like William
And
Shatner
family.
said, a chapter closes, another begins. It's what you do with it. I mean, good Lord, this is fantastic stuff, Laura. Wow. Well, I wish you all the best for all the projects. I hope this is a major feature film. I can't wait. And your life is so interesting. I mean, I didn't realize about the New York years and this man in your life, the doctor, and what you've always been attached to A-listers. Even with your movie career, with your brush with fame, as you refer to it, which I love. And
Yeah,
but
just a brush.
this fantastic attitude you got about everything now, it's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, it really is Forrest Gump, out of nowhere, Kansas girl. I didn't make it. I was never a superstar, but guess what? It makes my book more relatable. I think it's like I went, I played, I saw, I conquered, I have fun, and here I am.
Yeah.
You know, you don't
Well,
have to win at the game. You just have to go for it.
there you go. Inspirational speaker. You are. You are a superstar, my dear. You really are. Listen, that brings me to my last question. If I asked you what one word or phrase would really describe who you are at the centerpiece of your soul, what would it be?
An adventurer. I am an adventurer. I'm an astrologer, and I'm all fire. I'm Aries, Sun, Leo, Moon, Leo, rising, Pluto, and Leo. I'm all fire. I'm out there. What's the next discovery? What's the next ridiculous situation I can put myself into and learn from it? I'm like Gloria Steinem, the undercover Playboy bunny at the club in New York. You know, like what? How can I be? I'm a journalist, and I like to like scribe what happens to me, but I want to feel it. I want to have it. I want to experience it. I want to be on a movie set watching them make my movie. So be it, right? So, and it's an adventure. It's the adventure as much as it is once you get there, because once you get there, you're like, oh, well, this isn't that big a deal, you
Yeah,
know? And so you've
exactly.
always got to be, and I'm sure you've had that too with your successes. It's like, oh, here I am. Maybe thought I'd feel different. What's
Yeah.
next?
These are real people. These are real scenarios. It's not that bad. Yeah, it's not that difficult. But we do make it difficult in our minds sometimes. So, all the best to you. More
You
power
too.
to you to go be an adventurer. It's interesting you say that word because so many times in interviews I find that I'm interviewing people in front of me who are real discoverers, who are architects, adventurers. Yeah, it's incredible. There are some who just are. And again, we've been called, right?
Yes. And I want to shout out to Greenwich, Connecticut, because that was my hometown for many years, and Dingletown Church, where I worshiped there, little Christian church. But I love
Lovely.
Greenwich. I love everything about Greenwich. So hello to everyone in Greenwich. My hopes is that I become so rich that I can get a little tete-a-terre there, and I'll see you as a snowbird, and I'll be walking around getting
Brilliant.
my cocoa at the end of the block there, where they've got that cute little hot cocoa shop, and back at that sushi restaurant across the street that I love, and going to the concerts in the park there with Paul Simon. I went to all of those. I love those. So I love, love, love. Shout out to my homies in Connecticut.
That's so brilliant. Well, we can't wait to have you back, and I hope you become rich and even more famous, my dear. But what matters is the superstar you are in your heart, which is really fantastic. Listen, Laura Banks, I've got to thank you for being on Center Stage. You've been a delight. My God, you've got to be out doing a TED Talk soon. I hope that's on the docket, my dear.
It is.
And so stay in touch. Let us know about the feature film that'll be coming out about your fantastic book about the making of The Wrath of Khan and all of your life experiences. My gosh, all the best to you. And everybody, I want you to seek out Laura Banks. You can find her on YouTube, you can find her on the internet. She's out there. You've got to read this girl's stuff. And to anyone else who would like to listen to any of my shows, you can go to centerstagewithpamelakuhn.com and find a gallery of most of my shows, some of the best. And please drop me a note because I love to hear from my listeners. So, Laura Banks, once again, thank you. Thank you so much. Big kisses. And
Live long and prosper.
we
Live long and
most
prosper.
definitely, most
I
definitely.
had to work on getting that so I could do that. There we go.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. All right, and so now everyone stay safe out there. This is Pamela Kuhn, and the curtain is now down on Center Stage.